Please hang up and try again.
Nicole Nachtman, 21, shot and killed her mother and stepfather, Miriam and Robert Deans, at their Carrollwood home in August 2015.
Good morning, Mr. Rowe. If you could please state your name for the jury and then spell your name for the court reporter.
It's Wesley Rowe, Wesleyroe.
And Mr. Rowe, where do you live?
I live at Tampa, Florida, 33624.
And how long have you lived there?
About 12 years now.
And who lives with you at that address?
My wife, Elena Rowe, and my stepdaughter, Elizabeth Ray.
Do you know the defendant, Nicole Nachtman?
Yes.
And how do you know her?
She was a daughter of our neighbor next door.
Now, going to the summer of 2015, did you see Miss Nachtman around the house during that summer?
I would see her periodically. It looked like she was home from college for the summer.
Now, with Miss Nachtman, what was your interaction like with her?
Didn't really interact much with her. Just would see her. I mean, I just kind of see her come and go.
Okay.
I mean, we were speaking, and I'm guessing around 9:20 or maybe a little bit before then, we heard a pop, and then I heard a pop. It almost sounded like fireworks. And I was kind of thinking maybe, there were some kind of kids outside, doing fireworks or goofing off or something. So I didn't know exactly what it was. I basically walked out to our living room to see what was going on, and I kind of heard like a scream. It wasn't a kid's scream, it was kind of scream of, agony or disbelief. And next thing I saw was a shadowy figure run between the two windows in our living room towards back to that lake.
Okay. All right, now I'm going to get into that with a little more detail with you. So, the shots you said, you just described it as bang, and then you said there was a pause?
There was a pause, and then there was two more.
And were those more rapid in succession?
Yes, they were right after each other.
So, after that 911 call, did you call them back again?
Yes, I did.
And why was that?
After I hung up from the 911 call, I went out to front of our house inside, and we have some windows there. And I was looking outside the windows to see when the deputies or the sheriffs would arrive. So as I was looking out there, I saw something in my driveway, at the bottom of my driveway, and I couldn't figure out what it was at first. Couldn't picture what I was seeing because it was dark and there was some street lighting. And then I finally figured out what I was looking at were shoes, and I couldn't understand what are these shoes here. And then I understood that there was also blue jeans, and I figured out that was a body, and it was facing towards the road. So at that point I was really panicking, so I went and called 911 again from my cell phone.
Okay.
Can you please state and spell your last name for the record?
Robert Scott Carr, C-A-R-R.
Thank you. Are you employed?
Yes, ma'am.
Where do you work?
Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office,
How long have you worked for the Sheriff's Office?
approximately 17 years.
And in what position with the Sheriff's Office were you in August of 2015?
I was a sergeant assigned to a patrol squad.
Okay. Is a sergeant a supervisory position?
Yes, it is.
I want to turn your attention specifically to August the 20th of 2015. Do you recall responding to a call that evening on Fensbury Drive?
I do.
Approximately what time did you arrive?
Approximately 21-40 hours.
About 9:40 p.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
When you arrived on scene that night, were other law enforcement officers from the Sheriff's Office already present?
There was.
Okay. Do you recall if you were the first supervisor to respond to the scene?
I don't recall.
What was going on at the time that you arrived at 9:40 p.m.?
At the time, I know the deputies have already arrived, and we did see a female laying in the driveway. And from that point on, that's when other deputies were going around checking other residents to make sure that there were no other injuries, pretty much conducting welfare checks and neighborhood surveys.
At the time that you arrived on scene, had any entry yet been made into the residence at 14110?
No, ma'am.
So tell us what you did when you first arrived on scene.
When I first arrived on scene, I did approach the female laying in the driveway. I did observe that she did have some sort of trauma based on the blood near her head. And the call initially came out as shots were fired, so I was looking for shell casings that could be in the area, which there were 2 located that I did locate near her feet, which were marked after that. And while I was doing that, that is when other deputies were going door to door, checking on the welfare of all the other neighbors. And that's when I learned that there was a door open, lights were on, and nobody was coming to the door that was directly to the right side of where the body was laying at.
So what happens when you approach that residence and the door is slightly open? What do you do?
I did give permission for the deputies that were there knocking and announcing their presence to go ahead and enter the residence, just to conduct a welfare check to see if there anybody inside that may be injured.
Okay. And when you say you got permission, is this from calling other supervisors?
No, I made the decision
Okay.
at that time.
At that time, you were one of the supervisors on scene?
Yes.
All right. Prior to entering the residence, did you all make attempts to call out to see if anyone was inside?
Yes, several times.
Okay. And did you receive any response?
No, ma'am.
So tell us why you make the decision to go into that residence.
Based on the initial call coming out of shots being fired, and there's a female laying in the driveway next door that's deceased, and the door is open, lights are on, not getting an answer. You know, the safety of human life is our priority, so we want to make sure that everybody's okay.
So what happens when you go inside the residence? What do you observe of the residence?
I didn't go in initially. Other deputies did go inside,
Okay.
and as they were inside, they told me,
No, let me ask you this. You said other deputies go inside. What is the time period between other deputies go inside and you actually entering?
a minute or 2.
Okay. So tell us what happens when you enter the residence about a minute or 2 later.
I initially went in based on the information given to me that there was a door that we thought to believe went into a bedroom that was locked, and they couldn't gain access, so I went in to assist.
What do you observe inside the home prior to reaching that door? Tell us what you see in the home.
When I went in to the left. Kitchen table, there's a purse, set of keys laying on the table. As I kept walking toward the back of the residence, in the living room, the TV was on. It appeared that it could have been a movie that was on pause. There was a bag of, I don't know what type of potato chips in the recliner, as if somebody was sitting there watching a movie.
Were the
And-
lights on inside the home?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you hear anyone inside the home?
I did not.
See anyone inside the home?
Not at that time.
Okay, and I guess I should say, did you see any alive people inside that home?
No.
Please tell the jury your name and spell your last name for court reporter.
Greg Thomas, Thomas.
And Corporal Thomas, where are you employed?
Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
About 19 years now.
What's your current position with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
I'm assigned as a homicide section supervisor, corporal rank.
As a corporal rank of the homicide unit, what are your duties there?
Pretty much just supervise the assigned detectives to that particular unit in the capacity of calling them out on current cases. I'll go out with them myself to current cases, evaluating their supplements, reports, making sure payroll is up to date and so forth.
As a corporal now, though, you don't normally take on a lead detective type role in a case?
No.
All right. Back in August of 2015, what was your position at that point?
I was a detective assigned to homicide.
Were you on duty the night of August 20th of 2015?
Yes, I was called out.
You were called out. Where were you called to go? Do you recall?
The actual residence or the numerical, I'd have to refer to the supplement, but it was in the Carrollwood Village area, which is part of our District 3 patrol area.
Okay. Would 14108 Finsbury Drive sound familiar?
Yes, Finsbury Drive, correct.
Right. Do you recall about what time you arrived there?
I think it was a few minutes before 10 p.m. or so, or a little after 10 p.m.
What did you do when you first arrived?
Pretty much started to evaluate from patrol, or just basically be debriefed by patrol. As soon as I arrived, it was the residence is in a cul-de-sac, so the area was cordoned off with crime scene tape. There were several deputy vehicles or marked vehicles parked around the area with deputies out on what we would call a perimeter because of the actual 911 call that there were shots heard, and a decedent was located in a neighbor's driveway next to the incident scene of Finsbury. So it was assumed that maybe there was an active shooter, if you will, or active suspect in the area.
And so basically the house next door, would that be accurate?
Yes.
All right. And so when you were advised of this, what did you all do?
At that point, once I was kind of debriefed on what they had located inside, I needed to start to verify if we had like a murder-suicide type of situation or an active homicide situation with a potential suspect somewhere. So I went in to evaluate and look at the decedent on the inside of the residence and noted that he appeared to have been deceased for quite a period of time. So with my experience, I deduced that that was not going to be a murder-suicide situation. I had everybody pull out of the house, secure it so that I could author a search warrant.
If you could please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Yes, Wesley Zachery Jr., last name spelled Zackery.
Thank you. Are you employed?
Yes, I'm employed with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office Identification Section Latent Print Unit.
Okay. And what is your position with the Sheriff's Office?
I'm a forensic print analyst.
How long have you been employed as a forensic print analyst?
6 years, over 6 years.
Okay. And is that 6 years just with the Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
Tell us about your prior employment in that field.
I've been with the Tallahassee Police Department as an identification technician where I process crime scene for the purpose of identifying latent prints and compare those prints. 2 years with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office prior to my term now. 11 years with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement here in Tampa Bay as a crime laboratory analyst where I worked in the latent prints section, developing latent prints, on evidence, and then comparing those latent prints.
So in total, how long have you been conducting analysis and examinations of latent fingerprints?
Over 25 years.
Were you given latent prints in this case?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So you've indicated the latent print is sort of something that could be left by chance, I believe is the words that you used. Does that mean that every time we touch a surface, we're leaving behind latent prints?
There are several factors that could preclude you from leaving latent prints, such as the weather condition outside might be too hot, you might be perspiring too much, which will leave a black blob, a dark spot. You're not perspiring enough to leave any of the moisture that's on your hands onto that surface. It might be raining. Latent prints are fragile. It could be wiped away. It might be cold outside, so you may have some type of covering over your hands that could deter the depositing of that latent print on the surface. So there's a 50-50 chance that a latent print could be present on the surface.
Is it also accurate to say that sometimes when we touch something, we may leave behind what could be a print, but that it's not of a sufficient quality to be compared to anything?
Yes.
The locations from where those prints were collected within that home, did you have any personal knowledge of that, or do you just rely on whatever is written on the cards that they give you?
Just what is documented on the back of the cards.
Okay. And in this case, did you personally obtain known prints from Nicole Nachtman?
Yes, I did.
So would these that we have in State's Exhibit 65, would these then be referred to as the known prints of Nicole Nachtman?
Yes, they would.
And you indicated that you personally collected these prints from her on January 15th of 2019.
That is correct.
Okay. And we see prints here on the front and the back, and then also a second page, left hand, front and back of the entire hand, and then it also appears that we see individual prints. Is that correct?
Yes.
Using these known prints in State's Exhibit 65, did you then compare them to latent prints that you received in this case?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Sir, if you could please state your name and spell your last name for the court reporter.
David Lehr, L-E-H-R.
And where do you live, Mr. Lehr?
I just moved to Zephyr Hills, Florida. I used to live in Carrollwood.
Now let me ask you, Mr. Lehr, do you know the defendant, Nicole Nachtman?
Yes.
How do you know her?
She's my cousin.
Explain how she's your cousin, what the family relation is.
Her mom is my dad's brother, which makes her my aunt on my dad's side.
What's your dad's name?
Pete Lehr.
Okay. Would you say, in the course of growing up as cousins, that you and Nicole Nachtman were close?
Yes, yes,
Okay. Would you see her frequently?
yes,
If she was in town, say from school, would she come visit, or would you go visit her?
yes, both.
Did you know Bob Dean's her stepdad?
Yes.
And how well did you know him?
I've known him since he was married to her, I guess, and I knew her, obviously through my aunt, and I would hang out with him that year, like frequently. I would help him with, I go over there, watch movies, we'd have barbecues, or I'd help him with. He was older, so I helped him with house chores, remodifications, stuff like that.
How often would you say you would go by the house to visit and to work and help him?
Him specifically, just whenever, but I went over there a couple times a month, I guess, 2 or 3 times a month.
2 or 3 times a month?
Yeah.
The week of the murders, were you in contact with Nicole Nachtman at any time during that time?
Yes, I was.
When was the last, when during that week do you recall being in contact with her?
The Friday before, I went to their house.
Okay.
And also the last time I saw her was on a Wednesday, the week of the murders.
Okay, well, let's go back to the Friday before then, since you mentioned that.
Okay.
Who all was present when you were there that Friday?
Bob, Valley, and Nikki, all 3 of them.
Okay, and you say Valley. Who's Valley?
I'm Miriam.
Is that the nickname that the family gives to her?
Yeah.
All right.
That's her middle name. Yes.
That's what?
Her middle name is Valencia, so they call her Valley, and that's why I called her Maya, forever.
Okay. So all 3 were present when you were there on that Friday?
Yes.
Did you observe while you were there that Friday any sort of fighting, consternation, anything that gave you concern?
No, there wasn't any actually.
Did everyone seem to be getting along and everything was fine?
Yeah, at that time, yeah.
How long were you there that Friday?
Probably a little over an hour, I guess.
Now you said the next time you saw her that week was on a Wednesday. What were the circumstances about that?
I was at work, and I guess sometime in the morning she had called me. So I was too busy to get the phone. So after the call was over, I texted her, and I told her that I'm at work, that I'm busy. What's going on? And then she texted me. She wanted to know if she could talk to me or whatever. And then I said, okay. I said, how about after work? And she said, fine. And that was it.
Okay. So what time did you get off work that day?
I imagine 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah. Started 2:30, somewhere in there.
2 or 2:30?
Yeah.
And did you head straight home?
Yes, I did.
All right. About approximately what time did you get home? Do you remember?
I think it was around 3 that day.
Okay. And did you call Nicole Nachtman back?
I totally forgot to call her back.
Okay.
It slipped my mind. So as I was coming home, I was pulling into the driveway. The phone rang. It was her, and then I remembered that she texted me. So then I answered the phone.
Okay.
She just asked me what I was doing, if she can come by, and I kind of asked her. Yeah, I said, yeah, it's fine. What's going on? And then she asked me. She told me something about if she could borrow money for her dorm room. So I had money on me.
Did she tell you how much she needed?
$100.
And you had that with you?
Yeah, I just happened to have it on me. So.
Okay. So what did you tell her then?
I told her, I said, yeah, come on by. She said she was going to come right away, so I said, okay, I'll wait in the driveway.
Right, so you never even went in your house then?
No, at that time, no.
Right. And did she show up shortly after talking to you?
She did. Like immediately, probably about 5 minutes.
About 5 minutes.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Jessica Gilbert, Gilbert.
Thank you. Ms. Gilbert, where are you currently living?
I currently live in Blacksburg, Virginia.
Okay. And are you working?
I am.
In what capacity?
I am a residential learning coordinator at Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University.
Okay. I want to turn your attention back to August of 2015. Were you a student at Florida State at that time?
I was not.
Okay. Were you employed with Florida State at that time?
Yes.
In what capacity?
I was a program assistant with Florida State University's housing department, working in their contracts and assignments office.
And how long did you work in that position?
I was in that position for 4 years,
From when to when?
from May 2013 to July 2017.
Tell us what that job entailed. What were your duties?
So as a program assistant, I was the first point of contact for a lot of students or families that had questions or concerns about living on campus at Florida State, and I did some contract and occupancy management and assigned students to spaces on campus.
In addition to the contract, was there another item that Ms. Nachtman would have had to send in to secure her place?
She would have needed to pay a $100 deposit to solidify her contract before we could assign her to a space.
And when you say assign her to a space, does that also include assign her to overflow?
Yes,
Okay. Do you recall whether or not that deposit was sent in?
it was.
Okay. And do you recall when it was sent in?
It was sent in shortly after we received, or after I processed the contract, the morning of the 20th, because I believe she received her assignment later in the afternoon.
Later in the afternoon of the 20th, she received her assignment?
I believe so.
And when you say received her assignment, you mean like she was told the specific room or whatever that she would be assigned to?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Gail A. Berghorn, Berghorn.
All right, Ms. Berghorn, are you employed?
I am.
And where are you employed?
I work for a government consulting company called Sava Workforce Solutions, who has a contract with the DEA Digital Forensics Lab, SFL9. I work in their Utah lab.
Okay, and how long have you been employed in that position?
Approximately 4 years.
Prior to that, were you employed with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement here in Tampa?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and in what capacity?
I was a digital forensics criminal lab analyst.
Okay. How long were you employed as a digital forensics criminal lab analyst?
Approximately 4 years.
Tell us, if you could, about your background as it pertains to digital forensics. How long have you been employed in the field involving digital forensics?
I started working in digital forensics in 2011, where I took an intensive 1-year training with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, where I took internal and external trainings in digital forensics, read books, took tests, did proficiencies, competencies to learn how to do digital forensics. From there, I worked for FDLE for approximately 3 years, doing examinations on all different kinds of digital forensics, digital media, computers, cell phones, laptops, cameras, thumb drives. And from there, I went to Utah to work in a DEA laboratory.
What I would like you to do for us is tell us, if you could, what we're looking at here. Let me zoom in a little more. Sorry.
You're looking at Chrome searches that were made on the phone.
Okay. And what I want you to describe is, in the top left we see IEF report viewer. Is that in fact the Internet Evidence Finder program that you had previously described?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is this a screenshot from what we would see in that program?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And so tell us, you said that we're looking at Android or Internet Chrome searches. Is that correct?
Yes.
On the left-hand side of this screen here, we see web-related and then a bunch of things underneath. Tell us what all that is.
When it says it's web-related, it means it has things to do with a connection to the Internet.
Okay.
And getting information off the Internet.
But I guess I mean in the broader sense, this screen, what is contained on the left side? Is that sort of everything that was pulled off the phone, or explain that?
This is information that was extracted from the phone.
Okay.
And I think you said on direct that typically in a situation like this, you don't really know the details about an investigation or a case.
That is true.
You're given this device, asked to extract or download any data that may be on the device, and then it's later up to the case detective or whoever submitted the device to determine what's important and what's not on the device.
That's correct.
You don't do any of that analysis.
No, I do not.
So you have no idea what any of this information that Ms. Derry just asked you about has anything to do with Nicole Nachtman or her case.
No, I do not.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about some of the entries. (64A), can you see that?
Yes, I can.
You had indicated that these are basically internet or Chrome searches, which we see over here on the left-hand side, right?
Yes.
So this one that happens to be highlighted in blue, it says "Getting Away with Murder," which it appears was searched on August 1st, appears to be song lyrics from some song. Is that correct? If you look down...
I can only see what's on the list.
Right, so if you go down, that same entry appears to say "murder lyrics," as if it's some type of song. Is that what that says? You see where I'm pointing?
It says, well, getting is not spelled correctly, but it says "getting away with murder lyrics."
As if to imply maybe some kind of song.
Perhaps.
Now, are you able to tell us what any of this means? Like if an actual song lyric was downloaded or anything like that, or any file associated with that?
When it says source, it's indicating where it was located on the phone, and the evidence number is just the evidence number that it was given.
So we can't tell from this document whether maybe some song lyrics were downloaded as a separate file or anything like that.
No, we cannot.
64B, again another blue highlight. This appears to be a search. Again, we're at Android Chrome searches, correct?
Yes.
The process for dropping out of college. Does that indicate that that's the search terms that are put into the Chrome system, or what is that when we read that, for example?
It means that at some point, part of that process of dropping out of college was typed in.
Please tell the jury your name and spell your last name for the court reporter.
Mitchell F. Messer, Jr. Last name is spelled M-E-S-S-E-R.
All right, and I know I'm still calling you detective. Are you currently employed?
No, sir, I'm retired.
All right, so should I call you Mr. Messer, or can I still call you Detective Messer? I don't know what the formality is.
I'll answer to either.
Okay. All right, how long ago did you retire?
July 31st of 2018.
Okay. Prior to retirement, where were you working?
At the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been working at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
Just shy of 30 years total.
All right, and while working at the Sheriff's Office, what positions did you have?
Worked in patrol as a traffic homicide investigator. I worked undercover at times in different capacities, narcotics investigations. I was a robbery detective, an auto theft detective, property crimes detective, homicide detective, cold case, as well as regular homicide detective.
Back in August of 2015, what position were you working in at that time?
I was working in a homicide unit, both as a homicide detective as well as a cold case investigator.
How long did you, at that point in August of 2015, had you been working as a homicide detective?
I want to say between 8 and 9 years.
Now, as a detective with a homicide unit, when you get calls, what occurs? How does that work? How do you get notified?
Well, it's day or night. You get a phone call at the house, and it's generally a supervisor that's informing you of something that has happened, and they tell you where to go.
All right. And specifically on August 20th of 2015, did you receive a call to head out to a location on Finsbury Drive?
Yes, I did.
You had indicated that at some point you had made entry or made some observations of a bedroom that was later determined to belong to Miss Nachtman, correct?
Yes.
And there was in fact a dorm receipt that was dated August 20th, somewhere located within that room.
Yes.
So now moving into the early morning hours of the 21st is when you attempt to make your first attempt to locate Miss Nachtman. Is that correct?
Attempt to locate or make contact?
Make contact via a phone call. The phone call we heard earlier.
That was at 8:26 that morning, yes.
Now, ultimately, you all, and again, I know you're utilizing the help of Florida Department of Law Enforcement in Tallahassee, FSUPD, but you all are ultimately able to obtain information that she, in fact, checked into her dorm that morning at Smith Hall via this check-in process and people who had checked her in at the dorm.
Actually, we had made a call. Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office had contacted admissions at FSU prior to me doing the control phone call. That was about 8 a.m., I believe, when they opened and learned that she had, in fact, checked in. Or at least secured a dorm room, I should say.
Now, when you arrive, you and Detective Portalatine, to the Florida State Police Department, is Miss Nachtman already there, or is your recollection that she comes shortly after?
I believe she was already there. I don't remember waiting a long period of time. I'm not sure if she was there waiting when we walked through the door, but it wasn't long.
And she's actually in one of their interview rooms that happens to all video and audio record.
Yes, eventually. I'm not sure, again, if she's already there waiting on us. It seemed like she was outside and we all entered the room together.
She's also obviously at a police station, not being the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, but she's at the Florida State Police Department.
That's correct.
Now, this audio or video recording of Miss Nachtman at the Florida State Police Department, you viewed it, correct?
Yes.
And it's several hours long.
Yes.
However, when she's initially, or when you initially walk in and obviously introduce yourselves, it's not too long after entering the room where Miss Nachtman starts discussing the Snow Queen with you. Is that your recollection?
Yes.
And again, you later learn the Snow Queen is from Frozen, or the Disney movie Frozen, and it's the Princess Elsa.
Yes.
You're clearly observing that her reaction to the situation is not a normal reaction, which is why you asked her that question. Isn't that true?
Possibly. I didn't see or understand the relevance of the story that she was telling me, that's for certain.
And in fact, that she's not realizing the seriousness of the situation.
I don't know that I'd say that.
Do you recall giving a deposition in this case, Detective?
I did.
That deposition was back in October of 2018? Yes?
Yes.
I was there under oath asking questions about this very topic.
Okay.
I'm on page 55, counsel. Do you recall me asking you the question, but clearly you see something wrong with her reaction to this whole situation, I'm assuming, so you were asking her. And your answer, no, you're probably right. My question, your mom's dead, right? You know? Answer, yeah, your mom's dead. Is that your recollection? That maybe she's not realizing the seriousness of the situation.
Okay. I would agree with that statement.
Good morning, Mr. Carey. If you could please tell the jury your name and spell your last name for the court reporter.
Good morning. Joseph Carey, C-A-R-E-Y.
And Mr. Carey, where do you currently live?
I live at University Place, Washington State.
All right, where? I'm sorry, Washington State?
Washington State, yeah.
Okay, University Place. Where's that?
It's outside of Tacoma, right by where I work. It's a joint base, Lewis McCord.
And who do you live with there?
My wife and 2 kids.
And you said near an Air Force base. Where are you currently employed?
I'm in the United States Air Force. I work at joint base, Lewis McCord.
And what do you do for the United States Air Force?
I work for NORAD, the Weapons and Tactics Office over there. I'm a master sergeant working there.
How long have you been with the United States Air Force?
Since 2001.
Do you know the defendant in this case, Nicole Nachtman?
Yes,
And how do you know her?
she's my sister.
Or is she a full sister or a half sister?
Half sister.
Do you all share the same mother or the same father?
Same mother.
So the victim in this case, Miriam Deans, was your mother.
Correct.
So Nicole was about 3 or 4 when your mom moved with her to Virginia. Is that right?
Yes.
Was that about the last period in time when you were actually living with Nicole Nachtman on a continuous basis?
Yes.
Aside from the fact you all weren't living together, did you all still remain close, visit, see each other from time to time?
Yes.
Talk via phone from time to time?
Yes.
Now, Robert Deans, did you know him very well?
Not very well, no.
About how many times do you think in total you saw Mr. Deans throughout after your mom married him?
I'd say a handful of times, 4 or 5 times.
Now, when you would visit Nicole, with your mom, did everything seem normal? Did you see any sort of fighting or loud arguing when you were there?
Between who? Say that again?
Just the family? Did you see any strife or anything that caused you concern?
No, nothing that caused concern, no.
In the summer of 2015, did you see Nicole at all that summer?
Yes.
Or when did you see her?
The summer where, before the incident.
Did you see her here in Tampa, or where was she?
No, I was living in Washington State. She visited me out there.
Now, were you already married by then?
Yes.
And you already had your kids?
Yes.
Okay. And how long did she stay with you that summer of 2015?
3 weeks to a month, somewhere in that area.
While she was there that summer of 2015, did she ever discuss any issues with you about your mom?
Nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay.
Nothing, just typical.
Did she ever mention to you that she was concerned about your mom or concerned about their relationship or anything that she was worried about?
No.
Did she ever discuss with you any issues at school or things that were going on at school, problems she was dealing with at school?
I mean, on that specific visit, I don't remember. Typical problems, bullying or whatever.
Okay, so she did confide in you some things, but anything that caused you alarm or concern at that point?
No.
And what was your understanding as to where she would be going in the fall?
Florida State University.
Was that the last time you saw Nicole Nachtman before these homicides?
Yes.
So tell me, Mr. Carey, when was the first time you heard about these murders?
I was coming off of mid-shift, which is 12-hour shifts we do at my job, where it's like 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. And got out around 6:30 a.m. and got to my car, and I saw missed phone calls and text messages. And I called back, and it was my Uncle Eric, and he was crying, and he told me that I thought it was my grandma immediately because he lives in the same area. And she's older, so I thought maybe something happened with my grandma, and then he was crying, and he said, "No, it's your mom." And that's when I found out.
Okay. So when you're on these shifts, you can't have your phone with you?
You can't have phone in the building.
Okay. So you get this call from your Uncle Eric, and he informs you that your mom has passed. Did he mention Robert at all?
Yes. The rumor in the beginning that was...
Object to hearsay.
Also stand at this time. I'll caution the witness not to testify what somebody else said to you unless specifically asked and we have a discussion and I allow it.
Without saying what was said to you, what was your understanding or belief at that time, in your own mind, as to what possibly had occurred?
The understanding was that it was a murder-suicide, that Bob had killed my mom and was found with a gun in his hand in his chair, and he had killed himself.
And that's kind of what you had just interpreted from hearing things, and that's what your belief was?
Yes.
Okay, so your immediate concern at that time was for your sister and her well-being?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. And so as you got home, so that's your first conversation with your sister?
Yes.
How did she sound when you talked to her?
If I remember correctly, it was like a lower voice, maybe a little bit upset.
Okay. And in that conversation, did she say anything to you that you recall specifically?
In that first phone call, no. It was more just receiving the information from me, and I think she had already talked to some of my uncles before I had called her too, so she had already been given the news.
And so, according to what you just said, your purpose of that phone call is just to put her at ease, to let her know that you had family and you were coming there and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, she's not alone. She's surrounded by family and everything's going to be fine.
And did you call her back?
I did.
All right, tell us about that. How long after she called you did you call her back?
I guess it was about 15 minutes or so. And I went to the couch and sat down because I had a feeling it was probably going to be a longer call, so I can, if she's calling me back, my mindset was she needed to talk. So I wanted to dedicate time to talking, so I went to the couch to sit down and talk to her.
Okay. And when you called her back, what does she say to you first?
So I answer, or she answers, "Hey Nikki, just want to let you know again, we love you, miss you, we're going to see you soon." And then she got quiet. She said,
Oh, I'm sorry, one of the jurors is still having trouble.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So, I started off with the normal chit-chat, love you, we'll see you soon. And then she just was quiet for a second, and then she said, "I'm going to miss you, Joey."
Just like that, just very matter of fact, I'm going to miss you, Joey?
Yep.
All right. What did you think when you heard her say that?
I didn't know what she meant the first time she said it. And I don't think I made sense of it just yet. And I said, "What?" Something like, "Say that again," or what? She's like, "I'm just going to miss you." And I said, "What do you mean?" And then at this point, saying it out loud sounds weird, but I was thinking maybe she was thinking of hurting herself because her mom's gone. So, but I didn't want to put words in her mouth, and I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "I want to say I said, are you thinking you're hurting yourself now at this point?" And she said, "No, I don't think I'd do that." And I said, "So what do you mean by that?" And then she got quiet again, and then she says, "I shot him." I said, "You did what?" Like, I shot Mom and Bob. I was like, and I remember leaning forward on the couch and saying it again. I was like, "What do you mean you shot Mom and Bob?" I was like, "Why'd you do that?" Or something to that effect. And she just started crying really bad and talking really fast. And I couldn't understand what she was saying. I was trying to calm her down. And eventually I was trying to get her to calm down and make sense of what she's saying. And eventually she got to the point where she was explaining that ever since she got back from London, her school trip, that she's had uncontrollable screaming in her head and like a high-pitched screaming, and that it was affecting her sleep and she was having nightmares from it. And then I tried to calm her down some more, and then she said, "If I had only gotten the good news phone call about the dorms earlier, I wouldn't have had to do it." And I didn't know what she meant by that. I didn't know anything about the dorm situation. I didn't know what she was meaning by that. And then she said something that I remember was, I'm sorry I had to do it. But I'm not sorry that I did it, but I'm sorry I had to do it. And then she was, more crying and things like that. And then I remember thinking to myself, well, I don't know what to do now, so I'm going to call my family and have them help me think correctly about this.
My name is Charles Patrick Ewing.
Tell me what you do for a living.
I'm a forensic psychologist.
Tell me what a forensic psychologist is.
I evaluate individuals who are involved in primarily criminal litigation, but some civil litigation. In civil litigation, mostly involved with evaluating plaintiffs who claim that they've been injured. And in criminal cases, I'm involved in evaluating criminal defendants. My practice has gone on for 30, 40 years. Most recently, most of the work that I do is court-appointed work. I evaluate competency for the courts in, I'm not sure what judicial district it is, but it's Collier County, Lee County, Henry County.
Kind of down in South Florida.
Yes.
Wasn't reading my notes. Tell me whether you have an opinion as to whether, based on the psychological abuse, the physical abuse at the hands of her mother, whether you have an opinion as to whether Nicole meets battered child syndrome. And I guess it would be appropriate at this point to kind of explain what battered child syndrome is to the jury.
I do have an opinion, and it is that she does suffer from battered child syndrome. Battered child syndrome is a term that originated from a pediatric radiologist named Henry Kemp, Dr. Kemp, and he was looking at x-rays of children who were abused. And what he was able to discover is that a lot of child abuse, physical child abuse, went undetected. Things like spiral fractures, things that could be seen with an x-ray. At that time, the modern scanning devices weren't available. But he coined the term battered child syndrome. And as it's evolved in the literature over the years, in the professional literature in psychology and psychiatry, it's come to encompass physical abuse, psychological abuse, and or sexual abuse. So basically what it is, it's a finding that this youngster was severely abused, either physically, psychologically, and or sexually, and that as a result of that abuse, she developed the typical psychological responses that we see. And typically what we see is somebody who goes through that kind of experience as a child develops significant personality issues. And that's what we've seen here with Nicole Nachtman. She never fully developed as a person. Her personality development was stunted, and she suffers from a major mental illness, schizophrenia. There's been no treatment in this case, so that doesn't apply. At least one of these must be 1, 2, or 3. So the first criterion that needs to be met is delusions. Nicole meets that criterion. She explained to me that she was convinced that her mother would kill her. This was at the time leading up to the homicides, which I don't believe is fact. A delusion is a fixed belief that someone has that can't be shaken by the truth. And almost always the fixed belief is false. Otherwise, we wouldn't call it a delusion. But her delusional thinking goes beyond that. She was convinced that Bob, Mr. Deans, had killed her dog. She was convinced that he had put dog feces in her room and then blamed it on her to cause trouble with her mother. She told me that I pretty much have the attitude that people are out to get me. She also had what we call ideas of reference. These are a kind of delusion where you think that something you're seeing that's meant for all of us has some particular meaning for you personally. And the example that I would suggest meets that definition is after she returned to the campus after these homicides, she saw a sign to the effect of, "You are one step closer to your dreams." That's a sign she saw in one of the buildings at college.
And what did she interpret that to mean?
She said, it was just like you just had a stillborn and go home and see a magazine that's full of pictures of babies. That sign was like a fuck you to me. She thought that that sign was directed at her. That now that she had done this, she was one step closer to her dreams. And she saw that as an insult to her and intended as a, quote, fuck you to her, which is another evidence of delusional thinking. The DSM refers to also bizarre delusions. Not all delusions are bizarre. If you think that the FBI is tapping your phone, that's not a bizarre delusion. They're not tapping your phone, but they could be. Her bizarre delusion is, quote, being alive and living are two different things. I don't think I really live, even on the outside. It was like being buried alive. I'm dying or already dead. That's a really bizarre statement, really two statements on her behalf that I see as at time she had this delusion that she wasn't living, that she was already dead.
If you could please tell the jury your name and spell your last name for the court reporter.
Emily E. Lazarou, M.D. My last name is spelled L-A-Z as in zebra, A-R-O-U.
And doctor, what do you do for a living?
I'm a general and forensic psychiatrist.
And what does that mean, a general forensic psychiatrist?
Well, I'm a physician. I'm a psychiatrist. I treat patients. And I do general adult psychiatry where I treat adolescents up through elderly people. And then I also do forensic psychiatry, which is sort of what we're doing here today, where I evaluate cases and talk with a jury and teach you guys about these cases from a psychiatric standpoint.
How long have you been a practicing psychiatrist?
Since 2008.
Tell us about your education in order to become a practicing psychiatrist.
I got my undergrad degree from Baylor University in Waco, Texas, and then I went on to do my master's at Texas A&M. And then I went on to do my medical school at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, Texas. Then I came here to do my residency in psychiatry at USF here in Tampa. In the 4th year of my residency, I was the chief resident over all the psychiatrists. And then I was the first fellow to begin the University of South Florida Department of Psychiatry's Forensic Psychiatry program, where I graduated from that fellowship.
Aside from your current medical practice, what else have you done in your career?
Well, I've had the opportunity to do multiple different things. One of the things I did for quite a while is I've worked in the Department of Corrections. I was a forensic psychiatrist, in the psychiatric prison. I've worked on death row. I've worked in multiple different jails where I was the chief psychiatrist there. I've run a forensic unit in a psychiatric hospital for people that were awaiting trial either for sanity issues or competency issues, and I also ran a not guilty by reason of insanity clinic in San Antonio, Texas, where I treated patients not guilty by reason of insanity in the outpatient setting.
Now, were you retained by the state of Florida to undergo a forensic examination of Nicole Nachtman?
To perform one, yes.
Okay. Prior to the meeting with Nicole Nachtman, what sort of material were you provided in forming these things?
I got multiple different records. I went through all the jail medical records from Nicole's admission there to 2018, deposition of her brother Joseph Carey, deposition of George Lehr, deposition of Eric Lehr, deposition of Hunter Lehr, deposition of David Lehr. Then there was a transcript of proceedings. There was a hearing regarding the battered child syndrome, the multi-part police interview with Nicole. I also did some of my own research in terms of watching The Snow Queen and Frozen.
One second. After reviewing the jail records in this case, was there ever any diagnosis of any psychotic illness in this novel?
No.
Is she being treated for any psychotic illness?
No.
Is she currently taking any medication for any sort of psychotic illness?
No.
All right. Besides reviewing all that material, did you also meet with the defendant in this case?
Yes.
And how many times did you meet with the defendant?
I met with her 3 separate times.
And what would be about the total number of hours you spent with her?
According to Attorney Hersey, it's about 14 hours, so I didn't calculate it myself.
Okay. Doctor, I'd like to start with the battered child syndrome issue in this case.
Yes.
Dr. Lazarou, do you feel that Nicole Nachtman meets the standard for battered child syndrome?
No.
Now, first of all, Ms. Nachtman is not currently a child, correct?
Correct.
And she was not a child, I guess, at the time when she committed it, or this occurred.
Correct.
All right. And what is her age now?
She's 25.
Now, does that factor into your opinion on this issue?
No, it didn't.
All right, I brought everyone back because the bailiffs have indicated that the jury has reached a verdict. Is there anything from the defense before I bring the jury in?
No, sir.
Is there anything from the state before I bring the jury in?
No.
Thank you. Bring the jury in.
Ready to?
You're ready.
All right, jury entering.
All members of the jury are present and seated. Everyone else may be seated this time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome back. I usually wait till the very end to thank you for your hard work and dedication, but I think under the circumstances this morning it's appropriate to thank you perhaps now and when I release you. But it's my understanding the bailiffs has indicated to me that the jury has reached a verdict. So my first question is, normally, whether you've elected a four-person, but we know from prior communications that that is juror number one. Is that correct? And juror number one, do you have, well, first of all, has this jury reached a unanimous verdict in this case?
Yes.
Do you have the verdict form, juror number one? If you could please give that verdict form to the bailiff, Deputy Oliver. Thank you to the foreperson. I will review the verdict and then I will give it to the clerk to be published. Ms. Nachtman, if I can please have you stand. And if my clerk will please publish the verdict.
Yes, Judge. State of Florida versus Nicole Nachtman, case number 2015 CF 12204. We, the jury find as follows as to count one of the charge. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant personally discharge a firearm? Yes. During the commission of the offense, and as a result of the discharge of the firearm, was death caused to Robert Deans? Yes. We, the jury, find as follows as to count two of the charge. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant personally discharge a firearm? Yes. During the commission of the offense, and as a result of the discharge of the firearm, was death caused to Miriam Deans? Yes. So say we all, dated this 3-day August 2019, four-person of the jury.
Going.
Nicole Nachtman, 21, shot and killed her mother and stepfather, Miriam and Robert Deans, at their Carrollwood home in August 2015.
Can you try and do it a little bit faster?
Nicole Nachtman, 21, shot and killed her mother and stepfather, Miriam and Robert Deans, at their... This is the Carrollwood that gets me.
Yeah.